Probably would.
It does. These little chunks, man. I'm telling you. I always try to wear eye protection. Especially epoxy will chip up and fly in your face.
Have you sustained any injury on this job?
Oh, God.
What's the worst injury you've had on this job?
Oh, God. Just cut my fingers a couple times. Chisel cuts. Little things like that.
Good.
Splinters all the time.
Splinters, sure.
Oh
My God.
I've taken Susanna home with me numerous times.
Oh, my God.
Here it is.
There it is.
Moon to Mars coming in. Bridge, deck, and it's called a bridge because it bridges across the boat. Because you don't want to glue the plugs in and have the epoxy cure overnight. It'll ruin your chisels. That way the chisel's cutting something that's closer to hard rubber than obsidian. Again, it's, it's all about the 5 Ps.
What are the 5 Ps?
Proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
All right, what is it? April 26th? That was John Beatty's birthday. My brother John is 59 today.
59. Like they asked Bob Hope what he liked about George Burns. He said, he's the only guy that still calls me kid. Well, our goal was to have this done by the end of April, so we beat it by 5 days, 6 days. Not bad.
Okay, and are we done with the deck, really?
Yeah, we're doing the rough sanding today, minor repairs, so forth, and then probably start caulking Thursday.
Day after tomorrow?
Yeah. Because we can't caulk it all at once. Because you got to prep the seams, which includes getting them oil free. So you can't wait 2 or 3 days to put the caulking in. You got to do it that same day. And it's a big enough deck to where we'll start up against the cabin side and work out, 3 or 4 seams a day, I don't know. And then once we get it going, I'd say it would be done by 2 weeks, caulking it, something like that. But we'll be doing other stuff because we're not going to dedicate an entire day because you got to get away from it. You can't be dealing with solvents in the freshly caulked area. So we'll probably do 4 or 5 seams this side, 4 or 5 seams on the other side, and come back 2 days later, that sort of thing.
Let's take a quick walk around and see what starting to possibly think about. When might be a launch date?
In fact, that reminds me, I got to call Warren back, the boat mover guy. He, unlike everybody else in this world, called me back and left a message that he has a hydraulic trailer.
Okay.
So it should be, quote, no problem. Getting out of here. Here it is.
There it is.
Moon to Mars coming. So this is the king plank back here, Sapele. And everything else is just teak planks all the way to the bow.
Right. This opening is cut correctly. It doesn't have to be cut anymore for the.
Nope. So, and before we caulk, we'll do a lot of prepping. Like we'll probably set the hatch up, get it set up, make sure that it's the bolt pattern is correct. We have some hardware, some other holes to drill that we marked a long time ago.
Okay.
This is where the turning block for the spinnakers go, or the Genoas, I guess. So we've got that marked.
Yes, the deadly thing.
And then there's a piece of hardware here that we've marked.
Gotcha. Right, we
And of course the winch pad assembly goes here. So we're getting ready to plane that down too, by the way, and start fitting in. We want to get it real close before we caulk. Once you caulk it, you lose a lot of information. And we've been board sanding it at a roughly 45-degree angle to get this down to one surface. So that when we caulk it, we're not dealing with a washboard surface. We're not talking about very much, but a 32nd of an inch or so will drive you crazy when you're trying to caulk and sand.
So that's what you guys are working on today, is just lightly sanding the deck to...
Yeah,
Nice.
we're pretty much done with that. We'll spend another hour or so going around it, double checking everything. Got some more time to deal with the bridge deck. That's just roughed in.
Yeah, we'll take it. That looks great.
Okay, so
That's what that's called, the bridge deck.
bridge deck. And it's called a bridge because it bridges across the boat, see?
Okay.
And we also just teak planks,
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
lots of plugs.
All the plugs are in now. Right, I don't think any of the plugs were in last time.
No. And then it's the king plank on the bow.
Beautiful.
And we've cut out for the windlass. So that's ready to go. All of this started a long time ago, laying out the king plank on the deck. And it all came down to that, where you end your nibs and so forth, and it's slightly tapered for looks. And in here, we knowing the windlass was going to go here, we were able to use a different set of nibs here, because the windlass will cover this. Let me grab that windlass pattern. When the windlass is on, you can see that nib is
Perfect.
just right. And the same with these. You see how they end underneath?
Right.
So they're about the same length as this nib. Well, you don't put a nib here because then you'd have a little tiny piece of wood. So
Gotcha.
we wanted some continuity here. So we just ran them under like that, so that when the windlass does go on,
Ah, brilliant. As opposed to having multiple little tiny pieces underneath that you didn't need.
no, and for strength too.
So that's
So when you look from here, why it looks like one king plank. Same back aft. When we put the hatch on and the mizzen ring. Isn't that nice?
beautiful.
Yeah. And the old deck had I don't remember it entirely, but this plank was notched here. It went around and went back to a feather.
Okay.
So rather than do that, we made a wider plank that tapers to the same width as these, and then that made this plank land in here with about a...
Interesting way there.
Yeah, because otherwise there'd be a little feather there and there's no way to fasten that,
Gotcha.
So,
That's the same on both sides here.
yeah. And again, it's all about the 5 Ps.
What are the 5 Ps?
Proper planning prevents piss poor performance. 6 Ps, actually.
Was that 6?
Yeah.
Counting wasn't one of them.
Or
That's great.
So yeah, and that's what it all culminated in. All this stuff we made months ago was all about this, getting it to where when you finally lay it down, it looks like it kind of just grew out of the boat. Same on this side, just more of the same. Lots of teak planks.
So just ready for caulking, right?
I think so. I mean, we're pretty much done with the rough sanding,
And
We'll-
all the
we'll go-
plugs, beautiful.
we'll go
2,000
ar-
plugs.
Yeah.
How long did that take, Clint? That was most of the last
That's
six.
most last week. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can only do so many a day, because you don't want to glue the plugs in and have the epoxy cure overnight, it'll ruin your chisels.
Okay.
So we use fast cure epoxy and plug them, and about 2 to 3 hours later, when it's cured but not super hard, then you come in and cut them off and sand them flat. That way the chisel's cutting something that's closer to hard rubber than obsidian.
Gotcha. Great. So
Yeah.
this is so the next thing is, you're saying Thursday you may start doing some caulking, and then some other little jobs around.
Yeah. We've got a couple hours on the bridge deck to finish fairing that in.
What's going on with this one now?
The bridge, just sanding it and
Just sanding it. Okay.
getting it down to one level, clean up. We'd like to get some varnish on that. See that log that we made 3 years ago?
Yeah.
With the main beam. It only has, I think, Smith's epoxy on it. So we want to get some varnish on that before we caulk, because it'll be hard to do later. Maybe, I don't know. We'll think about that.
Okay.
Kind of like, yeah.
Again, would that
Yep.
be the next thing to put in?
Yeah, and working on this here. Watch yourself. We're gonna have to make a new seat because the old one just didn't quite work out for us.
The lid.
Yeah, the lid. And like this area here, we're gonna make this solid teak. Here's solid teak. Remember it had those little tiny planks here?
Oh, did it? Yeah.
Jeez. Well, that's because I think they cut this out later.
Possibly, yeah.
Probably after the
Install a
day.
location.
Yeah. So you don't want little 2-inch planks. So we'll just make a solid piece of teak here and there in the corners. So it's very clean. I don't know, we gotta, do the, we were able to salvage the combing, this piece across here, and this piece of molding. So we'll be able to reuse that.
Okay,
And
but
this,
it all has to be all caulked first, right? All that has to happen first.
pretty much,
Work
yeah,
on top of that.
pretty much. Because you want this sanded,
Right.
the finished product, before this goes on.
Gotcha.
But, these pieces are next in this area.
Okay.
Framing all this in and making it as close as we can get to watertight. We can't really, because of this cutout in the propane tanks. But we'll make it better than it was.
Okay. Well, if a little water gets in here, we have drain holes.
Yeah, exactly. And the water on the deck will run, down here and out these little scuppers.
Okay.
So 95% of it won't get in there. And if it does, we got drainage.
Okay. Also, then this metal piece will need to be reinstalled.
Oh yeah, well see now, in sanding, this surface here now is flush with this one. Okay,
Oh, it's beautiful.
so now we have to just do the finish sanding on this just to get the epoxy drips and stuff out. And the metal piece goes in, the backstay lever goes here. You remember we made that
Sure.
jig?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now all
you
we
have
gotta
it all
do-
mounted already.
Right. We mounted on a piece of MDO as
Yeah.
we took it off, so that now we just take the MDO and set it on here and drill our holes. There's no layout.
Yeah. Let's go see. I remember.
Remember that thing?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. See, there's a lot going on here in terms of these distances, all this hardware, the various screws. You don't want to be running around looking for number 16 oval head screws and the bolts, the carriage bolts, and just the general layout.
Yeah.
So this goes up against the metal in the back. See the bevel in it?
Yeah.
And this goes basically up against the hatch.
Okay.
So that way, fore and aft we're good, and we know that it goes dead center in the boat. You're only going to see a little bit of that king plank, by the way. I mean, you'll see a lot of it, but yeah. So when it's time to drill for all this hardware, we just take it off, lay the piece of MDO on the deck, and drill the holes. That way, there's no measuring, no wondering.
Oh, where did I put my notes from 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Very smart.
At some point, any point after the caulking's on, the deck's sanded, you can drill the holes,
Right.
you know. In fact, I prefer to drill the holes before it's varnished.
Okay.
That way, when you're varnishing it, you let the varnish run down the holes and it seals the wood, okay?
Right, instead of drilling through the varnish.
Exactly. Plus, you'll scratch the varnish up. You will scratch the varnish up. It's not a question of if.
Right.
So, you can maybe get the first sealer coats on, if you don't care, and then drill it, sand the varnish, and slop it on there. So this is something that will only take a couple hours to prep, as you can see,
Still, it's a couple hours.
but not a couple days.
Right.
Had we just not put this together. And over here, Clint, this is just a starboard side has a few. You can see them. A little low. I think the port side's done. Because when we caulk it, we're not really taking any more tea caulk. Just, I mean, tissue paper. So if we can, we might want to monkey with those today.
Just bring them up and see how they sit right now.
Oh, they won't fit because we scribed them to 5/8 when it was just plywood. So we scribed a line around there. Now we got to plane that off. See, because they were sitting down before. What were they? Oh, they were sitting on the plywood, weren't they?
Plywood, no, they were on the old teak, I think. Like the original teak from the first deck. Because remember,
Yeah, it was real
pads themselves
thin.
had cut off pieces of teak and then
Yeah, that's right.
new teak. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that was the first.
When they put the new deck on back in '81, did you say?
80s, yeah, 85.
They left those on there.
If that was indeed the second deck and not the third.
Yeah. I don't blame them for leaving them there.
No, it was only the second deck.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they had put on a new deck before we owned it. But I don't think so.
But they had cut the deck out around the winch pads
Yeah, amazing.
and left the old stuff
They didn't
there.
want to pop the winch pads off.
I don't blame them. It was a pain. But we had to because the deck was not good. One of the things you do in your prep for the caulking is you sand these seams.
Okay.
And the way to do that is you take a little piece of sheet metal that's very thin and you bend the sandpaper around it so that when you come in like this, you can. Here
So
it goes.
have you guys done that yet?
No.
No. So that's to sand the inside of the seam itself,
Uh-huh.
on top of it.
No,
Gotcha.
top's done.
Okay.
Most all this stuff is done to the point where we don't need to monkey with it anymore.
That's great. Well, everybody's pretty blown away with how it looks.
And it's a lot stronger. Like in the old days when they're holy stone in the decks.
It's really saying it's fun.
And see, there's the hatch.
Okay.
We use that pattern for the bolt holes, and we use that pattern for the sub frame. I don't know if you remember making that frame that's underneath the deck.
Okay.
See all those angles? That's the piece those represented the pieces of wood that we had to miter and install within that hatch opening, so the hatch can go back on. I hope it fits. It'll fit. But you can see you can't mark the holes. How do you mark the holes? Well, you have to make that pattern so we can lay the pattern on the deck to mark the holes for the hatch.
Great.
Because we didn't want to take those bolts out because they come out in the top in a really finely finished combing
Okay.
that are plugged.
Oh, okay. All right.
So if you took those, you would have created another 2 or 3 days of work trying to get that to look right again, not counting all the touch-up and varnishing you have to do on those plugs that are in a curved surface. So you leave those alone. This seems like a little more trouble, but it's not.
Not if it saves you time later.
Not if it saves you time later. See, when you do a king plank, the best way to do them, example would be, here's the pattern for the,
Yes, you sent me some photographs of this. So yeah, this is the king plank pattern.
this
Part
is,
1, right?
right, this is the first pattern. And then you transfer that to your MDO, this 1/2 inch stuff that's very, very stable. It's got paper both sides so you can draw a nice line and see it,
Okay.
even if you're not semi-elderly. Okay. So then you use this pattern to make this pattern, which is actually a jig. And then you get this, you get happy with this, and you lay it on the deck, fit it to the teak planks that are there, where you really got a nice fit, and then where, like here's where the deck beams are, then you take that and screw that to the piece of sapele. That way these holes that are in the sapele you'll be using to mount later. So these are locating you on the deck beam. And then it's clamped on this, or screwed on the sapele, which is cut rough to this shape,
Okay.
you know, within 1/8 of an inch or so. You flip it upside down, and you take the router and you copy it perfectly.
Okay.
So that you're not monkeying with that sapele.
Okay.
You know, in other words, you don't take this directly to the sapele because, the saw would have to be perfect. You're trying to plane and sand the grain going this way and grain going that way and this way, so you make it out of this. It takes an hour to make this, but when you get to this stage and you love the fit, you're almost done. So that's what all that's about, is cutting out the nibs and the sapele.
All on that saw right there.
Yeah, and they're cut, you know, leave the line plus a little bit so that the router doesn't have to take a lot off. And then remember when we were laying out the nibs and the caulking seams and the planks? We laid those out so that then you take the router bit and you rabbet the king plank so that all those caulking seams come into the king plank.
Oh yeah.
You don't route the nibs on the teak
Right.
because it would just go, it wouldn't line up.
Gotcha.
So
Do all that routing on the king plank.
yeah, so you just do it on the king plank. And then, as you saw, they come out nicely lined up.
Beautiful.
And it almost looks like you do what you're doing. So these, and of course the stern plank was the same, just smaller. That's what that's all about.
So did
Right.
you have this pattern already laid out?
No, because you'll never know what this is going to be exactly. In other words, when we laid out the king plank on the plywood, we have, of course, a center line. Then we have an outside line, which represents this point in the nibs.
Right, the outer side, yeah.
And then we have a second line on the inside that represents that point. So when you lay your plank in there, you're just sticking out, and you mark it to those two lines, and it creates the nib, which you cannot know what that's going to be, because you can see that as the plank comes back here, the nibs begin to get longer and longer until back here They're like 9, 10 inches long,
Right.
which is good because these are short planks, and if the nibs were short, the planks would look real stubby.
Okay.
Whereas up forward, they're long, sweeping
Long.
planks.
Gotcha.
So the taper is for many reasons. It's a taper because the boat tapers. And for the most part on the boat, you don't want to put a board, something that's parallel-sided and straight, looks like you bought it at the lumber company.
Right.
Even if you put the tiniest taper in, most people won't notice it.
But it makes a big difference.
Well, that boat looks better than that boat.
How tapered it really is.
Yeah. You can make two identical boats, and the one has the tapered pieces. People go, I don't know, I like that one better. I don't know why, you know? Winch pads, yes. But we might monkey with those today. Because, like I say, the deck is close to being the height that it's going to be. And there again, I just saw him the other day. And we actually cleaned this joint up, believe it or not. I know it doesn't look like it, but. What they had here, they had a little stick they put in there. They kind of fit it as best they could. So here's our scribe line from a while back. And you know what? I got to turn this around because you can't see it.
So this was where the deck hit it.
Well,
That's what you
this is our new deck height.
height. Right.
We got this clamped up perfectly in place, and then we took a piece of deck sample and scribed around. But as with everything you do with boats, you don't just take that line off. You want to sneak up on that, and then we probably have to take a hand plane to the deck up there to get these surfaces to mate up. Not going to happen in an hour. So.
Not going anywhere. I got all day.
Good, so do I. But we've got, I don't know, it could be 5,200, it could be deck caulk, but there's all kinds of old stuff in here.
What are you doing?
Well, we're going to get this down.
The bottom, right, you have to make up.
Say again?
You have to make the bottom smooth.
Right. Make lighter and lighter cuts, of course, as you go. Well, it looks like Honduras mahogany. A flash from the past. Can't get that no more.
No? What's the deal? That's like a protected.
You remember back in the 70s and 80s when Brazil was burning the rainforests?
Aren't they still?
Well, they were burning the rainforests, slash and burn so they could plant sugarcane for biodiesel and gasoline and so forth. Well, in so doing, who knows how many Honduras mahogany and other trees they destroyed. And so, well, now you have a commodity that's been wiped out, basically. And so the price goes up.
And is it not something that can be grown?
Oh yeah,
Slow growth. This is slow growth.
yeah. See, tropical hardwoods grow very quickly. They're not like fir or redwood or native softwoods. All hardwoods grow very quickly. Oak, get an oak tree that's 50, 60 years old, it's big, it's ready. A fir tree, 56 years old, 56 is just a kind of sort of nice tree. It's not really good for anything. It has to be 100 and more, generally speaking. So tropical hardwoods like teak and Honduras mahogany and even this sapele, they grow pretty quickly. So, like a lot of things, you know, the price caused it to fall out of favor with the market, which is very small now, the market. It's like back in the 50s and 60s, nobody was buying teak except for decks.
Right.
You remember Swedish modern furniture?
Yes.
Yeah, it was hideous. But it was all made out of teak.
It's very weird, right? Why is there that?
Well,
notch
the
there?
combing's here, see?
Right.
The deck's here, actually. So when they replaced the deck, apparently they couldn't get to this. There was a piece of molding that went along between the deck, or in that little corner where the deck and the combing meet. So they couldn't get that out. Because remember, they cut the deck around this.
Right.
So they couldn't get it out, so they kind of just like did the best they could and stuffed a little piece in there with lots of stuff on it. So what we'll probably do is clean this out, make a nice channel in here, all four of them,
Yeah.
and then just glue a piece of sapele in there. You can't see it, you know. It's
No, and will we see is that piece of molding still there?
no, we're not putting that back in.
We're not putting that back.
That molding, I think, was put in mainly to hide the seam. I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't look original. Well, look at that.
Don't have to trim off anymore.
That's lovely.
In fact, we may have to put something under there.
Now, the deck isn't exactly the shape that it used to be because they, like I said, they cut the old one out.
Right.
So all of this stuff is kind of like an interpretation
Sure.
of what they had. What do you think, Pilgrim? Shit, I think they're done. That's another thing too. Before we glue these in, we should probably sand them and get a coat of varnish because it's a lot easier to do down there than it is up here.
Sure.
Back in these corners and taping and all that.
That one came out nice.
Yeah. Same with this combing. Once we caulk it and sand it, we should varnish it before these go in. Now remember all those butts we had of the planks that came in here?
Yes, of course, not now.
Gone. And this plank here is actually one wide piece. It looks like two. Then there were some big screws, like 6 of them, 5 of them. And you see the holes over there?
Gotcha. Yep.
So those
Same
are
holes.
those are what fastened it.
Where do those come through?
They just go into here. They're just screws, they're not bolts.
Oh, they're screws.
They're mainly to just hold the combing. And of course the bolts here are what ultimately.
Yeah.
Now you remember through this whole area here we put solid blocking
Yes.
with a plate underneath?
Yes.
That was to strengthen this whole area and to allow us to just put the bolts wherever we wanted. Because before they had these little skinny like pads of plywood,
Okay.
which were obviously strong enough. And my whole thing is sailing in the Santa Barbara Channel. Make sure you can load them up because you will. We'll call that 5.
Yeah.
And the deck is, my goodness, the deck is over 3 inches thick there. if you count the blocking and everything. So you need at least a 9-inch bolt. Well, let's see. Go ahead and take that up. I'll meet you up there. These bolts are, yeah, see, that's what they did. The winch pads are roughly 5 inches thick. And the new deck in that area is about 3.
You gonna need new bolts, you're saying?
Well, no, those 3 are long enough. But if we decide to go all bolts, we're going to need some, 9-inch by 5/16. Anytime you get over 6-7 inches, starts getting weird. I know they're flatheads, so I don't have to worry about it. I'll call that in right now because it may be like, oh, we can have them in 6 weeks.
Really?
Oh, it's weird when you start getting into these longer sizes. It's not like the old days that most places had stuff up to 12. Now you could luck out, sometimes they have them. But back in the day, they were up to 12 inches. No worries. Excellent.
You tighten that for me?
Sure.
So you don't usually trim them down too much, do you?
No.
How do you figure out how much, if any, you trim them down, or if you put a support underneath?
You mean before we did this?
No, now.
We're done. They're on the
Well, I was
deck.
to say when you. Oh, they're on the deck.
Yeah,
They're actually resting on there. Good. Oh, they are. Because the other one was floating a little bit.
don't care. It was 30-second.
Okay. So once you clamp them down, they'll tighten right up.
Yeah, that one was really worn out. But we still have to clean these channels up and want to glue a piece of something in there, teak or sapele, so that debris doesn't get caught in there. And I think this will glue up just fine. See, right now, the whole deck, pretty much, the sanding is almost done. It's all a question of just putting the chrome on.
Okay.
See? So we're not going to take any more off this deck. So when it's caulked, the caulk is cured, it's trimmed off, the deck is sanded, then we'll do it. But, Mr. Murphy, we have to order bolts if we want to put bolts in here.
Yeah.
Need 2 dozen of them.
Oh, you want to get all new ones?
That's what I'm thinking, because those look kind of funky.
They looked a little.
And if you're going to go the trouble, because winches are a pain in the ass anyway.
Get ones that match.
You get them to match, no gall threads,
Yeah.
start fresh, you need more anyway. So,
It's just some hardware.
it's hardware. And
Never have to replace it again.
that's the thing. So, you sit here for 2 hours cleaning up the old bolts,
Right.
retapping them. Oh, shit, well, we have these screws, see? Yeah, well, we'll put them in too. Well, I think it's just better off just tossing it all and starting over. Cut thread, not rolled thread.
Whatever that means.
Well, whenever you do a bolt anywhere on a boat, but especially through a deck, through a hull, or something that's taking a lot of load, a cut thread, it's a finished bolt with no threads on it, and then each bolt is threaded. A roll thread is a thread that's produced as the bolt comes out, so the thread will be this big, but the bolt will be like almost a 16th smaller. So you have to drill this hole to get the threads through, but then the bolt's loose. And you don't really have a 5/16 bolt. It's about a 32nd or more smaller. So you always get cut threads, or full-bodied as they call them.
Right. So that's cut out of the same.
Right. So any structural bolt on a boat, except for the tiniest little, like a butt block or something, doesn't matter, should be cut threads.
It's nuts.
So this is a heavy pattern hex nut.
Heavy pattern hex.
Hex nut, correct. So as opposed to this, you see the difference?
Well, looks like one has more,
Meat.
just more meat. Yeah.
Also,
And that's the same size. You're saying.
yes,
Okay.
it's not only larger in diameter, see that?
Yeah.
but it's
Don't move
thicker,
it.
so it has like an extra thread.
Wow.
Okay, I know an extra thread doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot.
Okay. And why do you have all these extras already? We don't have to buy them. You
Right.
have the bolts that go with it, or you have short bolts.
I don't have the bolts to go to them.
What about these nuts?
Yeah, you already got that cleaned up.
Heck yeah. A little chunk in there.
What was it?
Oh, it's just a mixture of.
5,200.
There was mostly just glue, old glue and varnish. I don't think there's any. It might be a little 5,200 on the backside here, but that's hard right there. Varnish and whatever kind of glue they use.
This looks really good. Just fill it a piece of.
Yeah, we'll just put a piece in there and sand it down and just blend it in. Put it back. Oh, they fit
Not
nicely.
too bad. Yeah, they fit great. Yep.
This would fly up and hit you in the eye.
Probably would.
It does. These little chunks, man. I'm telling you. I'm always trying to wear eye protection. Especially epoxy. Chip up and fly in your face.
Have you sustained any injury on this job?
Oh, God.
What's the worst injury you've had on this job?
Oh, God. Just cut my fingers a couple times. Chisel cuts. Little things like that.
Good.
Splinters all the time.
Splinters, sure.
Oh.
my God.
I've taken Susanna home with me numerous
Oh my
times.
God.
Oh, hitting your head on stuff. Clamps when we're planking. Even though those pads are up there, we jam my neck on that beam. Years of old varnish.
They do have a propeller-like quality, don't they?
Color off an old biplane. For some weird reason.
So there is the teak Helms chair, helm station. This is the old lid for the propane tank. Just going to get redone. So we'll be looking to see that. The work on this. This needs to be glued in. A little repair work. Here, one of the feet is missing. You can see there's a little foot there. You can see that missing. Need to work on that. And then there's the transom piece that's just been refabricated. Chance to see that installed, hopefully, next couple of weeks. And just ordering up some new bolts for the winches. All the planking is complete. And the plugs are done, except for the little bit here, which is left for a reason, which has to do with sanding and finishing.
Just glue a piece in,
Yeah,
then we put it in. The caulking will fill it.
it'll fill it.
That way, otherwise you spend hours and hours trying to make this thing beautiful when it'll never be seen.
I like that little plane there. That's a nice little guy right there.
Yep, that's the old number 92.
Wow. Specialized tool.
Well,
Nice. It gets in there perfectly. Makes a nice little 90-degree angle.
I bought that brand new in 1969.
Wow.
See it? The reason it still looks new,
Yeah.
because you don't use it very much.
Okay.
Once in a while.
Right.
But I don't let anybody touch it. That's the key.
Prized possession.
Well, there's certain things that most people don't even know what this is. They go, well, that's cute. What does it do? You know, and what machine could you use to do what I just did? Even if you could set it up for an hour.
Yeah.
So there's certain things you just, all these little specialty tools, Looks nicer, huh? Right there. There's a bump in this one. Oh, that'll work just fine. Yep. Yeah. Do we care? No. So this one goes here. It's all about rocking and rolling and shaking around. No, but these winch pads, they're properly sealed. They don't stand in fresh water off and on for long periods of time. I have no idea how long they'd last. A long time.
Long time. I guess you can get, ancient wood too, right? You can find plenty.
Sure.
Fossilized or.
Well, the big thing nowadays is recycling old barns and stuff. Because that wood, like a piece of fur, if it isn't rotten in the first 30 years, it's just not gonna rot. Boats rot mainly because of two things. Fresh water leaks and bad ventilation. It's that simple. Well, we'll clamp her up. They're all different sizes, so I just made a generic size.
Some wax paper or just go ahead and clamp it?
Yeah, we'll just clamp them. It's an Eggenmagen Penobscot Adirondack sloop.
Penobscot Bay, right? Bay of Fundy.
Oh, Bay of Fundy.
Is no fundy. I mean, I'm glad we did this today.
Yeah.
Got that done, check. So we're pretty much done with the initial sanding.
That's amazing.
Just blow it down, and then I guess tomorrow we'll start sanding the seams. And like we did, we'll just sand and prep as many as we know we can caulk in a day.
Right. Okay.
Like say 4 starboard, 4 port, or whatever the number is. We're gonna start at the cabin side, and we're gonna tape it off really good. And you can't leave that tape on more than about 5-10 minutes without caulking.
But you don't tape off each seam.
No, just the cabin
Just
side.
the cabin.
And then out here, the margin board,
Right.
any finished piece of wood, the combing, all that. So while he's doing that, I've got to start on that cockpit seat area
The cockpit.
because there's a bunch of funny little pieces. And
Gotcha.
we can't do anything else till those are in.
Gotcha.